Welcome to today's episode on Cannabis Industry Review, and we've got BioServices with us, and Mark Finnegan is joining us. So Mark, I want to give an introduction to you before I bring you in, and essentially BioServices is a company that's out there facilitating contract manufacturing. So if you have the notion or the idea of putting your own CBD wellness products, Schedule 0 products onto shelves in South Africa, BioServices would be the strategic partner that can facilitate that. So Mark, welcome. Great having you on.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So, Mark, I'd love for you to tell us a bit about the history of BioServices, because I know your company goes back to 1986. So, what were you guys doing prior to the cannabinoid formulation space? Give us a bit of history.
Okay, great. Just to give you a short brief history, we were started in 1986, and we functioned in production line quality control and analytical testing services. And what that means is essentially what we would do is we would test the individual chemicals or raw materials that would go into the production process and essentially produce a finished product. And we would give those individual raw material components the green light to go to production. So we essentially functioned as a quality control partner for manufacturing companies. What tends to happen as well is a lot of these bigger guys tend to keep bulk raw materials on site. And sometimes they don't all get used in the production process. So when they come close to expiry, we also test those stored raw materials according to specific parameters. And if they pass those parameters, we then extend the shelf life. So you don't find yourself throwing away raw materials every couple of months. And that's essentially what we've been doing over the past 36 years. And fast forwarding all the way to where we are now.
Okay, awesome, perfect. So I know that we've had some engagements in terms of the CBD wellness products that are going out there to the market. Can you tell us a bit more about the type of products? We do know that CBD Schedule 0 products is really the space that many are allowed to operate without a respective marketing authorization for Schedule 4 or 6. And it's quite interesting. So can you tell us about that, as well as the nature of terpenes perhaps in some of the products? I'd be quite interested to know more.
Sure. So just to give you, a history of how we got involved in the industry, when the cannabis industry started becoming legalized in the South African market, we saw an opportunity to essentially do something that was very complementary for us because we have a lot of experience with production line quality control. We saw an opportunity to become manufacturers ourselves. And that's essentially what our business model was about. We wanted the ability to contract manufacture for entrepreneurs or current businesses and essentially assist them in getting a regulated product to market.
Awesome.
That's essentially what we did. And we currently manufacture Schedule 0 CBD products. I know that everybody knows what the Schedule 0 is, but just a quick brief background is it's no more than 600 milligrams per pack size and no more than 20 milligrams per daily dose. And your allowance of THC present in your finished product is no more than 0.001%. And that's essentially the regulations or the specifications that we manufacture to.
Okay, excellent, perfect. And now I have a question, because the one thing that come up is a lot of individuals are looking to understand the market, get into the market. And I deal with a lot of B2B or business to business companies where we, ultimately looking at a very regulated and controlled market. But I know that you are quite accommodating in terms of your minimum order quantities for white labeling. Can you maybe just describe what exactly is, white labeling, and how does your MOQ structuring look around, if someone wants to contact you and they want to put out their own CBD wellness brand, how does that look for customers, and what are the services you can offer in that space?
Sure. So, we understand that it's difficult for entrepreneurs to enter the market when you have to manufacture massive MOQs. So our idea was to assist the smaller guy to get into the market. Not only the smaller guy, but we cater for everyone, but we did understand that the MOQ was a big problem. Essentially, our MOQs are 250 units or bottles per run, and that's spread amongst the offering that we have. Essentially, a white label service is a customer is allowed to put their own label on a brand, and we would help them formulate their own unique formulation, which would essentially allow them to launch their brand into the CBD market.
Okay, awesome. And I'd like to talk about quality because I mean, I know that you've been through the process with SGS, which is a global auditor that reviews good manufacturing practices, so GMP, amongst obviously multiple things around ISO and any kind of accreditation standards that apply to industry, not just pharmaceutical, but cosmetic, food, and the rest. So tell us a bit more about how did that process go with SGS in terms of they obviously had reviewed and discussed with you guys the, conforming to standards that meet WHO, the World Health Organization standards for GMP. Let's talk a bit
Yeah.
about that, and then also you can elucidate to your engagements with SAPRA in terms of the traditional 22C licensing.
Sure. Our road, sure, it's been quite an experience, but it took us essentially 2.5 years, or just under 2.5 years, to achieve GMP accreditation. And essentially that was coupled with consultants helping us set up all of the systems and understanding and learning what it is to become a good manufacturer. Essentially, the engagement with SGS was very streamlined. Once you are ready, and I do stress that you need to be ready to have them come to your site and audit you, which is why making use of consultants is probably a good idea instead of trying to do it yourself. From there, we essentially spent 2 years setting up the systems, learning, training, and gaining the knowledge to be able to confidently go for our audits. And essentially 2.5 years later, we had SGS come and visit us. They went through our entire facility top to bottom. And when I say that, it's not only your systems and your paperwork, it's also your actual facility, the cleanliness of your facility, the way you manufacture, how you sterilize, how you clean all of your equipment, how you implement the quality controls that test and third-party validate all of the products that come off your production line. So essentially, it was one hell of a learning experience, and we're very grateful to SGS. They came in and they essentially helped us not only with accreditation, but they improved our systems. And a lot of people think that these auditors are there to shut you down and they're there to sort of badmouth you and put your company down, but they're not. They're actually there to help improve your systems. And with every audit you go through, you essentially become better.
Yeah, fully agreed. I mean, this is the big thing about, I mean, the US has learned this more in the dietary supplement and food space, let alone pharma. But, an auditor and a compliance company is there to improve manufacturing safety and to improve efficiencies because it mitigates risks, it removes potential liability, it facilitates, no one wants to have a recall of a product or a manufacturing batch or campaign. And ultimately, I agree with you fully on that. Even with SAPRA and regulators of any sort, whether that's private regulators maybe or industry related peer reviewed regulators, the intent is to make sure that you are manufacturing to the highest standards and that there's less chance that things can go wrong. They're a support
Yeah.
partner, and I agree with that comment fully. And I mean, this does bring us to the current status of where BioServices is engaged actively with SAPRA as well. How's that been going? What is the forecast on that look like at the moment?
Yeah, so it's been fairly good. Essentially, to be able to achieve your Section 22C license, you need to get a few key pillars in place. The first one for us was we got GMP certified, which was the obvious one. You need to have some sort of document to go to SAPRA with to prove that you actually know what you're doing. The second thing is onboarding a pharmacist. Now, we are currently having Miss Malalo Ramavoya as our RP, which is our responsible pharmacist. And our second QA pharmacist will be starting in the next week or so. So we're then fully compliant in terms of the 2 pharmacists that are required to be on site to responsibly dispense the products that you make and oversee the quality control of the products that you make. We then went for our, in parallel, our Pharmacy Council South Africa registration, Department of Health registration, and finally, we put in our paperwork for our Section 22C1B import, manufacture, and export license. And essentially, what that will allow us to do is to import CBD raw materials, manufacture finished products on site for the local and international market, and essentially export them.
Yeah, perfect. And I mean, that's a critical component. This was a question that, I wanted to ask, and that's around, increasingly there's this need for properly sourced or professionally sourced cannabinoids, specifically CBD, and maybe a minor cannabinoid or two, but there's still need for clarity on legislation, and also terpenes to facilitate the entourage effect. And I think this is really important. I think the intention of SAPRA and the intention of the regulations is to make sure that quality source APIs, or let's call it nutraceutical ingredients, are arriving, coming in, and they have full traceability, that you know where it's coming from. Can you discuss some of the challenges you experience in, shoring up that QMS, that quality management systems, and obviously sourcing to make sure that, you were able to deliver a quality product to the market?
100%. So totally agree with you there, Jeff. It's so important to make sure you're using good quality raw materials. For one, there's two prongs for this approach, or for this need. Is obviously, firstly, you need to be able to protect the end user. You need to know that there's no pesticides, or there's no heavy metals, or there's no residual solvents left in your raw materials that could potentially harm your customer or your end user. And secondly, to have good quality, high purity raw materials is very important from a manufacturing point of view, because in the pharma space, it's quite important that you standardize your manufacturing process. You need to be able to ensure that every single bottle that comes off your production line has little to no variation. There are variations in life. There's no avoiding that. But the aim of the game is to use the purest possible raw materials, so that you reduce that, so that the margin of variance between your products becomes so low that they're essentially the same every single time they come off your production line.
Yeah, fully agreed. I mean, and I like that you mentioned the testing aspects there, because the one interesting fact I like about BioServices is you guys have done almost, I think, 100,000 combinations of analytical tests over, the last couple decades. And I think that's always an important foundation when it comes to good manufacturing, because you almost have a testing background. Can you tell us a bit about what was learned over all those years in terms of, facilitating contract testing and that environment, and how you think that has helped you get to where you are now?
Sure. It's definitely a feather in our cap. Understanding quality control for a production line is obviously key when you become a manufacturer. Essentially, we over the years have done many tests. We currently test something like 100 different chemicals every week. And all of these chemicals go into various production lines for our partners and for our customers. And some of the key lessons we've learned is, wow, there are so many different avenues to explore when it comes to quality control. And some of the learning experiences, especially around the different key areas of quality control, is that generally you don't have one sort of laboratory that offers every testing aspect that there is. You find that there's very niche testing. Like, for example, in the cannabis industry, you find that HPLC, which is high pressure liquid chromatography, for your identification and your quantification of your APIs, GC mass spec, all of these types of instruments are generally run by laboratories that only run those instruments. They don't offer all of the different key elements that go into it. So what we did do over the years is we realized that there's a need for partnerships in the industry. It's not feasible for one laboratory to think that they can set up all of the different tests and be able to manage that and validate that, and make it financially feasible from a business point of view. So we endeavored to set up over the years a network of partnered laboratories, so that we're able to offer a full turnkey solution when it comes to QC, and also manage that from customer expectation and explanations for the customers, but essentially put all of those labs together to be able to achieve that. So currently we offer something like 400, I believe it's just over 400 different types of tests that are offered under our umbrella, through either our in-house laboratory or our partnership laboratories that are spread in and around South Africa.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, this is a big one. I mean, my background is very much with your Adcox and your Aspens and your GSKs of the world. And, it's always impressive to see the scale of, having in-house analytics as well as in-house micro for testing and release. But again, it's an extremely capital intensive investment. And very often with, I wouldn't say smaller, but more specialized pharmaceutical operations, They might have an in-house analytical lab, but the micro side of things might be outsourced quite readily. And those are the partnerships that are critical because, you have to decide, am I in the business of producing a product, or am I in the business of, doing all these tests? And this is kind of why it's really important as a pharmaceutical manufacturer to always look at it and say, look, what is critical for our in-process quality control? And what is something that maybe is a release test that we need to, we can afford to outsource. And at some later stage, as the natural cycle of commercialization happens and the company improves, it's always nice to have in-house testing, but it's not always the mandate and it's not always the requirement for certain products. So absolutely, I'm definitely glad that you've got that analytical background, and that also facilitates, identifying those critical control points when it comes to manufacturing. And on that point, I mean, one thing I know is you guys have strong aspirations for the next couple of years. I know that also stretches into the future of cannabis extraction. Tell us perhaps some more about what are some of the visions you see or the developments for BioServices in the next 5 years, as the market matures, as the SAPRA onboarding happens. Do you see yourself going into the extraction market, facilitating and helping local cultivators with, getting more value out of their, API or input flower or floss?
Yeah, 100%. From our business model and our vision of where we want to take BioServices, we would love to engage and hook up with the licensed growers that are producing good quality flower or good quality biomass, and assist them in developing, doing R&D around extraction methods, around validation methods, around cold commissioning their extraction plants. In terms of the extraction services from a commercial point of view, that's not really something we had in mind. We wanted to really focus on the manufacturing side of things. We believe that South Africa is a diamond in the rough, and we could definitely come in behind China in terms of our manufacturing capabilities, not only for the local market, but also for the international market, because we have a great opportunity with our cost of labor, where we can come in at extremely competitive pricing on the international market. So, to sum it up, Jeff, we would love to take our business into an R&D perspective around extraction. I believe that the rare cannabinoids are going to become quite a big player in the near future. We're only starting to scratch the surface about the medicinal properties that, for instance, CBG, CBN, CBS offer for the different ailments that people are experiencing. Not only that, but also innovation into being able to do these extraction methods for lower energy costs, lower cost of your actual solvents that you use for extraction, and innovation definitely in the manufacturing space in and around specifically cannabis. So we don't want to get involved, or we don't plan to get involved in any other type of pharmaceutical manufacturing, but we do want to get involved in the higher schedules of pharmaceutical manufacturing, but specifically cannabis focused, so Schedule 4 and Schedule 6 medicine. But we all have to start somewhere, and Schedule 0 is definitely the place to get started and get into the market so we can start driving this forward.
Absolutely awesome. No, fully, I enjoy that. It's good. It's good clarity for everyone who's interested there. I think there's a lot of value that you've presented today for us, so that we know. It's good. Very often entrepreneurs don't know what's out there. They approach it and think like, I need a full license, then I need a full GMP facility. I mean, it's so commonplace to, in the US, and I think the US and China and those markets do such a good job of white labeling services. Even CROs, clinical research organizations, CMOs, it's crazy to know that very often it's so fragmented, the sector, and you don't have to do everything. It's actually very efficient to focus on what you specifically are trying to achieve and have the right strategic partner to hit those aims. So again, for me, Mark, I can only say a massive thank you, because I think you've added, I've had discussions in the past where I had cultivators on, guys more on the extraction side, the quality testing side, and it's really important, I feel, for that segment in the industry to know what is possible from the contract manufacturing side of things. And I think you're giving voice to that, and I appreciate you making the time to discuss that with the audience watching. And Mark, I can only wish you the best of luck with the upcoming audits. And from my side, I'm sure that if anyone wants to reach out to Mark, has questions, I've included their landline, so you can give them a call. And feel free to send Mark an email. And as mentioned, they have MOQs, minimum order quantities, that start from 250 units. So that's very achievable. It's actually very nice of you, for lack of a better description. It's one way. I know from contract manufacturing that sometimes the biggest burden to entry is those MOQs. And it's nice that you've got that scaling tiers and the ability to collaborate. And that for me is fantastic. So Mark, thank you for your time, and I appreciate you being on to share more about BioServices.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And we look forward to having you back on to discuss what happens and how things are going with BioServices.
Brilliant. Yeah, hopefully our Section 22C audit will happen soon, and we can hook up after that to chat about how that experience was.
I'm definitely keen for that. So we look forward to it and look forward to having you back on. So thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for watching.